All right, I'm surprised I've never made a video on this fly, but this is one of my favorite dry flies. This is going to be a double wing stonefly. That's kind of what we're going to have when we're all said and done here. It's a bigger dry fly, something I throw quite a bit. I know a lot of that has to do with where I am. I'm up here in the capital region of New York. We do have the Delaware, which is a pretty technical river, but most of the rivers that I fish, have a lot of stocked fish, and they don't get too picky. And really, you just got to kind of throw something that's worth it for them to come up. And that's a really, really great fly. I've caught a lot of really big brookies on it, a lot of nice browns. Fantastic fly, and what I throw probably more often than not is a dry fly. I don't usually get too technical when it comes to dry flies. I also tie it in a bunch of different colors. This is an olive one, olive body, yellow legs. I tie a cream one. This one is a little different. That's the cream one. A little bit of a different dubbing on the thorax. That's deer hair dubbing, which gives a pretty cool effect too. So that's the cream. I'm going to tie this one in the standard one that I usually tie, which is the yellow body. So I'm going to do this on, where's that package? There we go. This is a Daichii 1270, size 10. It's one of my favorite large dry fly hooks. I tie a lot of my stimulators on it. Thread-wise, UTC 70. This is brown olive. I usually use brown for this, but I ran out of that, so the brown olive will do just fine. So I'm going to get this started a ways past the eye, and I'm just going to kind of measure out how big I want the head of my fly to be, and that's where I'm going to start my thread. So where I started my thread is where the end of my body is going to be, and I'm going to lay down a thread base all the way back to the bend of the hook, and then I'm going to return my thread to the front. And while I'm doing this, and I was going through my videos, I'm not a very tech-savvy guy. I just do all these videos on my cell phone. I did see a weird analytic. Something like 90-some-odd% of my views come from people that aren't subscribed. So what are we doing here? Hit that subscribe button. Get going on that. All right, so the first thing I'm going to tie in, I'm going to do the tail, and this is going to be some stimulator deer hair by Nature's Spirit. And that is one of my favorite materials for any time I'm using a deer hair tail or a deer hair wing. It's they're really straight fibers. They don't really have a whole lot of thickness to them, so they don't splay out like crazy. Really good for tails and wings. So I've got a chunk of this pulling out of my stacker here, just getting some of that fuzz out. And I'm just going to kind of line that up, measure out my tail, transfer my grip to my left hand. Get some nice firm wraps on there to kind of secure that, make sure it's not going anywhere. And I'm going to make my way down, holding on to the tips and holding that hair up to make sure that it's going to lay on top of the hook shank and doesn't roll around on me. And that's pretty good right there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to tie in is I've got a peacock eye here. And I'm going to take a couple of fibers from the lower end of that. Those are the smaller, more compact fibers with the shorter barbs on them. So I just have 2 strands here. And we don't have to go too crazy with this. I'm just going to tie a little bit of the tips in, tighten that down. And before I continue on with my thread, I'm just going to wrap this around and just take a couple of wraps with the peacock. That's not only going to help me gather the tail, but it's also just going to give a little bit of a hot spot on the tail end of this fly. Just something to break up the body, hopefully initiate a take. And we'll get that tied in and snipped out of there. Now as you make your way back towards the front, let's use some tighter wraps here and get some of that deer hair matted down. We want a nice uniform, clean body. We want to get all the lumps out of it and make sure it's just nice and straight. I got a fiber there that's kind of bugging me. So let's take all of these fibers, lift them up on top of the shank. Just give a nice clean snip. And we'll finish up, get all that closed in. All right, now on our way back down, I'm going to tie in the body material. The body material is going to be this uni floss. I use that in a lot of different colors. This one's going to be bright yellow. I've got it in purple, olive, all kinds of different colors. So I'm going to wrap that behind the thread, bring that even, and we'll start wrapping that down the body. And bring your thread all the way till you hit that peacock. Good. We'll put that in our material holder, get that out of the way. All right, next thing I did, I got some 2mm tan foam here, and I just cut myself a long strip here, cut a little bit of a tip into the end of it, and this is what we're going to use for the top part of the body. So to do that, we're going to lay that on top and kind of measure that out a little bit where we want that to go. About the length of the tail, a little bit shorter is going to be what we want. So I'm going to pinch that foam, get a couple of wraps in just to kind of get it set. And then I'm going to tighten it up with some wraps after that. Be careful with your first couple of wraps, especially if you're using a thin thread. A thinner thread can cut through foam like nothing. So you want to be a little careful with that. We're going to take our floss and we're going to do 2 wraps around where we tied in the foam to kind of finish that up and cover up the thread. And then we're going to go and take touching wraps all the way up the body. If you want, you can use the rotary function on your vise, but it's only going to take a few wraps to get up here, so I'm just going to do this by hand. By the time you put a half hitch in and bring your cradle around, I could be done. So now in the very end, you can see how it tapers down a little bit. So I'm going to double up my wraps and fill that space in a little bit. Double that back over. One more there, and that's about where I want to stop. Whoops. Get a few wraps in to secure that. Get it out of there. And that'll finish up the body. So that's what we got so far. So we're going to take our foam, fold that over with our thread right at the end of our body. Pinch that so it doesn't move. Get a couple of wraps on there to secure it. And once it's where you want it to be, let's move our thread down towards the eye. And we're going to use the rest of this foam. We're going to fold it back over on top of itself. So we're not going to cut it off. We're just going to secure it and kind of leave it there. So get all that secured there in the head. Make sure it's right on top, and we're good. Now, I'm going to take the tip of this foam, and I'm just going to snip a little chunk of it off. And the reason why I'm doing that is, see this point right here? How it doesn't, there's not a smooth transition up to the top of that foam. I want to change that. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this foam. I'm just going to set it right there. Get a little thread wrap around it. Pull it down. And all I'm doing here is just filling in that space a little bit. And the reason why I want to do that is it's going to give me a nice platform to lay my hair on. If I leave it the way that it was, when I pinch down on my hair, that hair is not going to want to lay flat. I want a nice flat profile with my wing. I don't want my wing sticking straight up in the air. So that's going to help prevent that from happening. All right, so in my stacker, I've got a little bit more of that stimulator deer hair. So I'm going to pull that out with my tips all aligned. And we're just going to kind of pull out some of that fuzz and crap. Get that about as cleaned up as we can. There. So we'll lay it right on top of the foam. Size it up. Right about there is good. So transfer your grip to your left hand. Get a wrap on there and really bite down and get that hair nice and secure. And before I let go, I'm going to come in here, get some of that snipped off. Slide my scissor points up in there. I want to do that at a little bit of a taper. A taper will really help with the dubbing process later if you give it a nice ramp to ride up on. So I'm just going to go around, get all this excess crap out of there. A whole lot of snipping on this step. Get all that out of there. Got a little rogue fiber here. And I'm just going to, some of this overlap hair, I'll get rid of that. But you can kind of see how it tapers up. This backside hair is really just going to build up bulk, so let's get that out of there. All right. So now we'll take our thread, and with tight wraps, let's get all that filled in and covered. All right, I'm going to bring my thread right back up to the point where the hair meets the foam and tie in my next material. You got a little bit of freedom of what you want to do here. I like this Montana Fly Company centipede legs in tan. You can mix and match whatever you want. I showed you the olive one earlier where I used the yellow. If you want to switch up a different color, that's fine. But I like the tan for this yellow-bodied version. So I'm just going to take a chunk, run it behind my, oops, slipped out of my hand. Run it behind my thread. I'm going to match up the tips. And I'm going to set that leg on the side closest to me. And then I'm going to run another part of this on the back side by slipping it in behind our thread. Match up the tips. Pull it onto the body. And a couple of wraps to secure it. That's pretty good there. Now you got a little bit of freedom for the head. You can use, pretty much any type of dubbing. You don't have to go too crazy with this. What I use is the same dubbing that I use for a regular elk hair caddis. I just got some tan dry fly dub here. In one of the other versions of this that I showed you in the beginning, I do use some deer hair dubbing, which is pretty cool. That's a cool material. It's made by Hemingway's. So you can put that on there too for a little extra character, kind of add some what looks like legs. This is just going to be cleanly dubbed with some of this tan. So I'm just going to load up a nice, smooth, uniform noodle. Let's see. Most of the wraps that we're going to make for the rest of this fly are going to be dubbed because we're filling in the head now at this point. So I'm just going to take my legs and my hair, get it where I want it, get a couple wraps in there to tame all that. I'm going to pull these legs back, get a wrap in front all the way down to the head, and then back it off a couple of wraps. The reason why I want to back it off is because I'm going to take this foam, fold it over, and I'm going to make one segmentation right behind the eye like that. Before you move on and move your thread further back, we want to add a little bit more dubbing because when you look at the bottom of this fly, you don't want to see your thread wraps, you want to see dubbing. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. And I'm going to fold my legs back. I'm going to take a wrap behind my foam. And then right where I started. And now I'm going to come down over the top of my foam and make a second segmentation. Okay. Now, I only have 2 stackers, so I don't have this all ready to go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out another little chunk of this deer hair, a little bit less than what I used for the first wing, and I'm going to add in that second wing there. And the reason why I like the double wing on this fly is this is going to sit down into the film. This isn't going to be a particularly high riding dry fly. So what you're going to want is that second wing does help with a little bit of extra buoyancy. So we'll get that stacked up. Pull that out. Might have some extra fuzz in there, get all that out of there. And same drill as before. We're going to take this, we're going to lay it right on top, about the same length as the wing that's already on there, a little bit shorter. And we're going to pull our thread over the top, get that secured, with a couple of firm wraps. And then where's my scissors? What'd I do with that? I left them over here. And then slip your scissors in here and let's just get all that right out of there. And that's going to create quite the mess, but get that out of there pretty easily. So right now you can probably see that I'm wrapping with bare thread. And the reason why I'm doing that is because if you continue on with the dubbing right now, that the knot that you tie, the whip finish, is not going to sink. So you're going to want to make sure that you're just using bare thread right now. Now, before I finish up and whip finish this, the last thing that I want to do, as I said before, it's a little bit of a lower riding dry fly. So with that, I like to add a little bit of cider material. So this is some orange Enrique Pugliese trigger point fibers. Some waterproof stuff, bright orange. And I'm just going to set that right on top. Get a couple of firm wraps and secure that. That's just going to kind of help you see it, help you keep an eye on it. And I'm going to come in here with my whip finish tool, get this finished up. I'm going to do another whip finish, but I want at least one with bare thread. And the reason why I want it with bare thread is that's going to help sink your knot. If it breaks, no biggie. If you want, you could add a little bit of cement there. I usually don't, but of course it's always an option. I'm going to grab some of these rogue fibers here on the back side. I might actually cut those off. So the way that I do this, I'm going to pull this up tight. And I'm going to do this kind of like the way you tie an egg. I'm just going to angle my scissors up. And as I cut, I'm going to turn it and just kind of leave it like that. Let's angle our legs a little bit better. All right. So for the final step to kind of cover all this up, just whack the light with my head, is we're going to take a little bit more of our dubbing. Just get a real light uniform noodle on there. One more little chunk. And then we're going to whip finish with the dubbing right on there, just to kind of cover up those thread wraps. That'll do it for the thread. Let's get that out of there. Got some of that cider material coming out of the back here. We can get rid of that. All right, so the final part of this is let's just snip our foam. I'm going to come in here with some thinner scissors, kind of cut this to a point, and this might set the record for maybe the most useless step of any fly, but we're going to do it anyway. And then I just want to kind of grab the tips of this, line them up, snip those off a little bit more even. There, that'll do. And that is it. That is the double wing stonefly. This fly was inspired by something I found in the Rangeley region of Maine. I was up there fishing. I found a nice big dry fly. I made some tweaks and some changes to it. Kind of arrived on this. I've been fishing this ever since. I've got a whole box full of these things. It's one of the best dry flies I've fished. It also kind of doubles up as a hopper pattern too. So in the dead of the summer, when you're throwing some hoppers, throw this guy out there too. Doubles up for that. I've taken a lot of really, really big fish on it. So it's a great fly. Definitely something you should have in there as one of your larger flies. I like it because even though I do tie a lot of stimulators, I just enjoy tying stimulators. I actually don't fish them a lot. If I'm actually going to fish a larger dry, this is usually the dry that I throw. So as I said before, again, you can do it in any kind of color. There's the cream. There's the olive with the yellow legs. So a lot of different options. But great fly, give it a try. Not the easiest fly to tie. You got to be wary of your bulk up here in the head, but you know, if you watch your wraps, it comes together pretty easily. If you have any questions or problems or troubles or anything, just throw them right in the comments.